Hi everyone, welcome to the next biology video. Today we're going to be looking at classification and taxonomy, which is a posh word for classification and how we put animals into groups. And we've got a lovely tiger here. I thought that would be good because he comes up in this PowerPoint, so I thought he might be good to have as a nice picture there. Right, so for GCSE you need to know about two scientists. They are both called Carl. This one is called Carl Linnaeus. I think we can get it there. Yeah, we go. Carl Linnaeus. And he was working around about 1750. So long time ago, more than 300 years ago. And all he had to base his findings on were what animal and plants looked like, what their characteristics were, and where they came from. He had a few fossils, but obviously in those days there was no DNA or anything like that. So his work was major at the time. And if we have a look here on the right, it gives us these groups. Okay, now Linnaeus worked out that there were kingdoms, and at the time he had plants and animals. That was his kingdom. Later on we added a few more. And the kingdoms are divided into phylum, or phyla is plural, which are then divided into classes, which are then divided into orders, which are then divided into families, which are then divided into genus, and which are then divided into species. So right down here at the bottom, this is the smallest group. We'll have a look at what species means in a minute. And right here at the top, the kingdoms, they were the largest groups. And if an animal wasn't the same species, but it was the same genus, that meant that it was quite closely related. If it was the same family, but not the same genus and not the same species, slightly less related, and so on. But we can have a look at that in a bit more detail in a second. Right, you have to know these and you have to know them in order. There's several different ways of remembering it, but I'm going to put one up for you. So, kids prefer candy over fresh green, and then I'm right at the bottom. I don't know if I can move me. Fresh green salad. There we go. Okay, kids prefer candy over fresh green salad. So if you can't remember it, jot that down and hopefully it will give you a little reminder in order, because quite often we have to put them in order in questions. So pause the video if you need to and jot that down. Okay, you will find other ones on the internet. I'm sure you can find another one if you need to. Right, so let's have a look at this in a little bit more detail and see what's happening. Okay, let me move me back out the way. So this was Linnaeus. And if we have a look, it's a bit more representative. We can see it in pictures, as it's a bit easier. The kingdom, Animalia, or animals. And in the animals, obviously this isn't all of them, but lots of different ones, from a dog there, lion, elephant, fish, butterfly, etc. So that's the biggest group. And then the phylum. Now chordata means backbone or tail. So all of these will have a backbone or tail. And then the class, the mammals, Mammalia, mammals. So it's getting smaller as we go down. Then the order, Carnivora, which you can probably guess means carnivores or eats meat. Then the family, this is pronounced Canidae. Now you don't have to remember these, but it's good to kind of understand how it works. Canidae, so I think we've got a fox, a wolf and a dog in this one. Now they're not all the same species, but they're still quite close. And then if we go down to genus, we've got the wolf and the dog, and the genus is called Canis. Now, if you think about it, when we talk about dogs, we talk about canines. And that's where the word came from. Because, because canis is used for canine. And then right at the bottom here, let's get in the right place, species. This is our little dog down here. So the further we go down, the more specific they are, and they've got less organisms in. And the reason it's called classification and taxonomy is taxonomy, these are taxonomic groups. So these are groups that animals or plants belong to. So let's go a little bit more detail about a species. So we're talking about a species, but what does that mean? So pause the video and just try and write a little definition for species, okay? Right, hopefully you've had a go. Couple of key words we need here, and it's really important, these key words. So, definition of a species. 2 organisms that can reproduce, I put it in red, and produce fertile offspring. Again in red. Remember, biology words, biology marks. So if you didn't get that, or you need to adjust it a little bit, please jot it down, and then you'll have the definition of a species. So species must be able to reproduce and must have fertile offspring. So you've probably heard of a lion and a tiger being mated together. In the wild they wouldn't meet each other because one lives in Africa and one lives in Asia, but scientists have put them together. They will reproduce, but their offspring are infertile, so they're not the same species. I think it's called a liger or a tigon, depending on which is the mum and which is the dad. But you can have a look at that if you want, look it up. Okay, so make sure you know the definition of a species. Right, the other thing Linnaeus did, Carl Linnaeus, he worked out how to name animals and plants. Now, the reason he did this was twofold. Firstly, different languages. It's very difficult to be very specific about what animal or plant you're talking about if you're trying to talk in a different language or in a different country. Also, some things were very closely named. For example, there's a species of crab. One species is called the blue spotted crab, and one is the pale blue spotted crab. And the names are really, really close together. So he invented this system called, here, binomial naming. Now, sounds like a big word. Bi just means 2, like biathlon. Nom in Latin means name. So it's a 2-name system. So every animal, plant, bacteria, fungus has 2 Latin names. And that Latin name, well, the first word will be the genus. Okay, remember that's the second smallest group. And the second name will be its species. That's the smallest group. So I've got an example here. The lion, its genus is Panthera, and its species is Leo. Now, if any of you are Leo star sign, you'll probably know that that's a lion, and that's where it came from. There's another Panthera as well, Panthera tigris, and you can probably guess what that one is. That's a tiger. So they're quite closely related, but not the same species. Let me give you a couple of others that I thought were quite interesting. Carrot. Carrot is Daucus carota. Okay, so genus and species. And the best one I found was rhino. Rhinoceros unicornis, like a unicorn. Rhinoceros unicornis. And there's one that you'll probably all know, but you probably didn't realise it was the Latin name. Tyrannosaurus rex. Okay, Tyrannosaurus is the genus and Rex is the species. So you've got a little bit of thing here, some writing here. The binomial system over here. Now, it was developed by Carl Linnaeus. Genus and species in Latin. Now this says always italicized. That means it's in italics, slopey writing. And the genus is capitalized, so we only have a capital letter here. Okay, if you're not sure what italics are, look it up. They're slopey writing, basically. But for GCSE, first one here, capital, second one here, small letter. Genus and species. Okay, so we've had a look at a few there. Let's have a look at this one. So this is us, Homo sapiens or sapiens. Our genus here is Homo, and our species is sapiens, so Homo sapiens. That's modern day humans. There are older humans, for example, let me see if I can do this one, Homo ergaster. Okay, this was an older species of human, like not quite as developed as we are today. Homo, so the same genus as us, so they're very similar, but a slightly different species, Homo ergaster. All right, so genus, species, capital letter, small letter, all in slopey writing, all in italics. Right, so now you know how to name species, and if you want to, you can go and look a few up to see what they're called. I know a rat is Rattus rattus. Quite an interesting, that one, but you can have a look and see what you can find. Right. Now, all that's brilliant. Kingdoms, phylums, families, orders, fabulous. But there's a little problem. So some animals, like the ones here, we've got a porcupine, a hedgehog, and an echidna. Now, they all look quite similar. They've all got spines. And Linnaeus would have put all these together, not the same species, but maybe the same order, the same family, because he was basing it on characteristics. However, when you look at their DNA, they're not related at all. They've just evolved in different places. Okay? And they've evolved separately, and they just happen to end up all with spines. So that if you look here, they're all different orders. This one is Eulepotifla, Rodentia, and Tachyglossidae. Okay, we've got some big words, don't worry, you don't have to remember them. But they all have different ancestors, and they're very a long way apart in terms of taxonomy. So when we look at DNA, we can see that they're different. But DNA wasn't around in the 1750s when Linnaeus was doing it. So nobody really looked at the DNA of plants and animals until another Carl came along. Remember, the other Carl was Carl Linnaeus. This is another Carl, okay? And this one is Carl. Now, I never know how to say this name. I always say it as Woese. W-O-E-S-E. Now, he did most of his work in the 1970s, which might seem a long way away for you, but that's when I was born, in the 1970s. So, obviously, very recent. Now, he looked at DNA, and he could also use microscopes, and he had more fossils. So, he had a lot more information open to him. And he put things into the 3-domain system. Now, we didn't get rid of Linnaeus's kingdom, phylum, family, order. We still use that, but he added to it. So what he did, if I can get it here, he said that Linnaeus, kingdom. Linnaeus said kingdom was the biggest group, but actually Carl Woese said there's domains which are even bigger above kingdoms, and he said there were 3 domains. Now, the one here that you will have heard of the most, probably, is this one, the eukaryotes. And Carl Linnaeus, the first Carl, he was looking all at eukaryotes because he was looking at animals, plants, later on fungus, but he couldn't see any of these two domains because they're all microscopic. So Carl Woese, he divided the domains into eukaryotes, which is animals, fungus, plants, and the others you don't need to remember those, so that's fine. Just be aware there's some more in there. Now we've got two types of bacteria here. The archaea. Now, when we're talking about archaea, we're talking about bacteria that have been around for a long time. Think of like archaeology, those kind of words. And phile, P-H-I-L-E, means loving something. So halophiles are bacteria that love salty conditions, really salty extreme conditions. Thermophiles, you might be able to take a guess at that one. Thermo, they actually love it when it's really, really hot. So bacteria that live near air vents in volcanoes, things like that. And then the original or true bacteria over here. So you need to know these three domains. You need to know eukaryotes, archaea, bacteria. This bit here that I was telling you, these are extremes where they live. So I've got them written down to make it a little bit easier. So let's just go to the next one. Right, eukaryotes. These are ones that we're familiar with. Usually multicellular. Animals, plants, fungi, that says under my picture. And protists. Okay, so if you need to, I'll just try and move me out the way a bit. Am I going to? Yeah, there we go. If you need to, you can copy that down if you know it already. That's absolutely fine. Okay, so all of these pictures over here, I think they look like wasps, toadstools, monkeys. These look like algae, possibly. Flowers, I think that's a yeast cell. All of those fit into here. Yeah, that will be a yeast cell because it's a fungus. So all of those fit into here. Now you probably know those already. Let's have a look at the new ones. Come on. Okay. Okay. So these are archaea. Think of them as ancient bacteria. Archaeology. Okay. Always look at the stems of words in Latin because it does help. They're primitive and they're simple bacteria, and they usually live in extreme environments. And we mentioned a couple there. Hot, salty. There's two. There's lots of others as well, but those are the two that, if it was an out of context question, you might get asked about. So any extreme environment where things are not normal conditions. So that's the archaea. And then the last one, the third one, the three domain system. Bacteria, the true or modern bacteria. Right? So, a couple of questions. Can you compare the Carls? So, what they did, who they were. Pause the video, have a little go, see if you can jot down whatever you remember. Right, well done. Let's see if you got any of these. So Linnaeus, based in the 1750s, looked at how organisms looked, where they lived, and he devised the kingdom, phylum, class, and he also named them using this binomial naming system, e.g. Taraxacum vulgaris. For those of you that like to know, that's a dandelion, Taraxacum vulgaris. And then we've got, just let me move my picture, then we've got Carl Woese down here. So in the 1970s, introduced the three domain system, and he based it around DNA, microscopes, and more fossils being found. Okay, so they did very different work, but we use both of them today. So if you need to jot those down or add any to your list, please pause the video now. Okay. Right, here we go. Exam question. A lot of information. Let's have a look. So, Galapagos Islands are located in the Pacific Ocean. Several species of birds called finches live in the Galapagos Islands. These finches are very similar to each other. This is two types of modern finch. We've got the medium ground finch and the small ground finch. Now, this is the work of Linnaeus, because if you look here, we've got kingdom. We've got a few missing, but we've got genus, and then one missing at the bottom. I'm going to go to the question, then we'll come back. Complete figure 1 to give the names of the missing classification groups, and then give the binomial name of the medium ground finch. Right, let's go back. So it asks us to fill in these classification groups. So phylum, order, family. You have to say it like you're on EastEnders. Family. And then species. And the second bit was naming, or the binomial name for, bear with me, medium ground finch. So this one here. Now we know to name it, we have to have the genus and then the species. So the medium ground finch would be Geospiza, how cool. That one with a capital letter, and then Fortis with a small letter. Fortis actually means strong in Latin. So, and just for interest, if we look here, Geospiza, so they are very closely related because they're the same genus. They're just slightly different species, so they couldn't reproduce for fertile offspring, but they're very closely related. Okay, this is the typical classification question, this one. But I want to show you one more. This is a 6 marker. If you are foundation, you would not get asked this. However, quite happy for you to watch it, okay? 6 marks. Now, here's the question. Describe how biological classification systems have changed over time. This is 6 marks. And if you've watched this video through and understood it, you will be able to do it. I've put a little clue up here. Who were the two scientists? What did they do? And when? So pause the video and see if you can have a go at that, and we'll look at the mark scheme. Right, so I said to you, do the 2 scientists, what did they do and when? So we're going to look at both the Carls, Carl 1 and Carl 2. And this is the mark scheme. So it's basically repeating what we know. So the old system, so if you mention Carl 1, Carl Linnaeus, that's the mark. And if you mention similar structures, that's a mark. And if you mentioned where organisms are found, that's a mark. Okay. And then more recent, we're looking at the other Carl down here, Carl 2, Carl Boas. Microscopes, if you mention here microscopes, DNA, more fossils, 3 domain system. If you mentioned all of that, or some of that, you can get 6. Now there's more than 6 ticks there, so you don't need all of them by any means. The only stipulation is down here, for full marks, answers must refer to both original and more recent. So you need to mention a couple about first Carl and some about second Carl. Now, if you can't remember their names, don't worry, you can still get 6 marks on this question from the other bits and bobs. Okay, so really well done if you managed to do that. Um, so learn kingdom down to species, learn the three domains, make sure you know the Carl's names and how to do a Latin name, and you should be absolutely fine. Right, well done everyone, brilliant job. I will see you all on the next one. Take care. Bye.